President George Manneh Weah has recalled 5 investment incentives and concession agreements currently pending before that body for ratification. The investment incentives recalled by President Weah include Dangote Cement Liberia Ltd, TIDFORE/LICEMCO, Nimba Rubber Incorporated, NRI, and the amendment to the Amended Firestone Agreement. According to him, the above-named agreements were recently reviewed by the Special Presidential Concession Review Committee, to assess and ascertain whether they are in compliance with the procedural and substantive requirements of Liberian law, and to evaluate the justification including benefits to the Liberian people and the nation for the tax and other incentives granted. President Weah's communication to the legislators noted that having reviewed these agreements, the committee derived the following general conclusions: that the legal requirements in the agreements were not fully adhered to. For example, several provisions of the amended Public Procurement and Concession (PPCC) Act of 2010 were violated. It further maintained that all categories of tax relief, import, GST, turnover, presumptive, fuel, and gasoline, withholding on interest, dividends and third-party services Act, were either partially or fully granted to the concessionaires without any showing of measurable benefits to Liberia and its citizens. Hence, the President's communication to the legislature also noted that most of these agreements seem to have been meticulously prepared as there are a number of avoidable typos and misinformation, while exhibits referenced in the agreement were not attached. Honorable Pro Tempore, in consideration of the foregoing, I hereby recall these agreements from the National Legislature for reassessment by the National Investment Commission, NIC, to enable them meet fully the procedural and substantive legal requirements, as well as value for money test, to show the benefit for the Liberian people, before possible resubmission to the National Legislature, President Weah letter noted. According to him, it is his hope that they drive a pro-poor agenda with a common interest that it benefits Liberians. Therefore, the lawmakers should give his communication their ardent and immediate attention. It can be recalled that President George Weah constituted a special committee to review all existing government concessions and agreements. The Executive Mansion made the disclosure on recently, before Weah's departure for France and Morocco on official visits. According to the then Executive Mansion release, the 9-member Special Review Committee would evaluate all concessions and agreements including contracts entered by and between the government, concessionaires, and contractors. The committee, chaired by the President's legal advisor, Archie Bernard, was also mandated to ensure that agreements entered by the government and private institutions are properly implemented in line with laws and the terms of the agreements, and also make recommendations where there are issues to resolve. President Weah further mandated the committee to ascertain and ensure that all contracts meet the legal requirements of the laws of Liberia and are fully implemented. At the same time, we urge the committee to ensure that the government and concessionaires are performing in line with their agreements. Individuals named to serve on the committee included, the Dean of the Louis Arthur Grimes School of Law at the University of Liberia, Negba Lee Warner, as co-chair, and Weah's economic advisor, Charles Bright, as a regular member. Other regular members included, Necular Edwards, Bendu E. Clark, Joan Nancy Castle, Jala Barbu, and Tepla Reeves. He also directed all government entities to facilitate the smooth operations of the committee. The World Bank and African Development Bank have identified bogus concession agreements as a challenging factor in reducing poverty and improving the lives of Africans. At a 2016 high-level panel discussion in Washington, as part of the World Bank's Fragility, Conflict, and Violence Forum, the institutions observed that despite being rich in natural resources, the lack of transparency and accountability in many concession agreements and contracts signed by most governments in Africa were leaving people of those countries poor, and without quality education, good healthcare systems and better infrastructure. Weah's predecessor, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, received criticisms for hastily entering unfavorable concession agreements that provided the country's natural resources to foreign investors. critics said the concessions brought little benefits to citizens. In 2013, the London-based accounting firm Moore Stephens conducted a Liberian government-sponsored audit of 68 concessions awarded. The report showed that only 6 of the total contracts, worth $8 billion, were fully compliant with Liberian laws. During the 12-year rule of Weah's predecessor, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the government attracted around $15 billion in foreign investment, according to a Finance Ministry report. However, the West African nation has been criticized by watchdog groups for signing away much of its public land to logging, palm oil and natural rubber companies. Former President Sirleaf government also sought to exploit iron ore deposits and the country's offshore oil sector. Meanwhile, during a motion on the communication, Barpolu County Senator and former immediate pro tempore, Senator Ramajala, called on his colleagues to grant the president request, which was granted unanimously.